They said I was just the maid during the will reading. Then the lawyer handed me the keys. Valentina Reyes, 28, leaves Medellin for a fresh start in the U.S., working as a nanny for a wealthy family in Palm Beach. Amid privilege and quiet tensions, she discovers the true power of loyalty, dignity, and being seen for who you really are. Follow the channel to see how Valentina's story unfolds, because what she inherited wasn't just a house, it was power, and she's just getting started. Chapter 1. The Woman from Medellin. The Florida sun beat down on Palm Beach's immaculate streets like molten gold, casting long shadows from the royal palms that lined the entrance to the Lancaster estate. Valentina Reyes wiped a bead of sweat from her brow as she approached the imposing wrought iron gates. At 28, her life had become a series of crossroads, each one leading her further from the bustling streets of Medellin, where she'd grown up. She adjusted the strap of her worn leather handbag, containing everything she owned of value: her passport, a dog-eared photo of her mother, and the crisp letter of employment that had brought her to this mansion. The advertisement had been simple: live-in nanny for 2 young children, generous compensation, private quarters. It was more than she could have hoped for after 3 years of cleaning hotel rooms in Miami. Name? The security guard barely looked up from his booth. Valentina Reyes, I'm the new nanny. Her English carried the warm, melodic accent of her Colombian homeland. The guard's eyes flicked up, lingering a moment too long on her face, her high cheekbones, full lips, and dark eyes framed by thick lashes. Valentina was used to the look. Her beauty had often been both blessing and curse. Go ahead. The gates slung open, revealing a sweeping driveway that curved toward a Mediterranean-style mansion of pale coral stone. As Valentina approached the massive double doors, they opened to reveal a stern-faced woman in her 60s, her silver hair pulled into a tight bun, her thin lips pressed into a permanent frown. Mrs. Wilkins, the woman introduced herself curtly. Head housekeeping. You're late. My bus, Valentina began. Mr. Lancaster doesn't accept excuses. Mrs. Wilkins cut her off. The children are in the East Wing playroom. Your quarters are in the South Wing, 2nd floor. You have Sundays off unless otherwise instructed. Mr. Lancaster expects perfection. Valentina nodded, following Mrs. Wilkins through the marble-floored entrance hall. The interior was a museum of wealth. Crystal chandeliers, original artwork, antique furniture that Valentina was afraid to brush against. Mr. Lancaster is in his study. He wishes to meet you before you begin your duties. Mrs. Wilkins stopped before an ornate wooden door. Remember your place. With a soft knock, Mrs. Wilkins opened the door and gestured for Valentina to enter. Edward Lancaster sat behind a massive desk of polished mahogany. At 72, his face carried the lines of experience, but his eyes remained sharp and assessing beneath silver brows. His once athletic frame had been diminished by illness, but he maintained the straight-backed posture of a man accustomed to command. Miss Reyes? His voice was stronger than his appearance suggested. Please sit. Valentina perched on the edge of a leather chair, hands folded in her lap. Your references speak highly of your work with children. Edward opened a folder on his desk. Harvard Hotel, the Donovan family in Coral Gables. Yes, sir. I worked as a housekeeper at Harvard Hotel for 2 years, then as a nanny for the Donovans for 1 year. Edward studied her face. And before Miami? Valentina hesitated. Medellin, Colombia. I was a teacher's assistant at an elementary school. Why leave? The question was direct, but his tone lacked the accusation she'd grown accustomed to. Limited opportunities, sir, and... She paused, debating how honest to be. My mother needed medical care I couldn't afford on a teacher's salary. Something in Edward's expression softened. And how is she now? The unexpected compassion in his question caught Valentina off guard. She passed away last year, sir. Edward nodded slowly. I'm sorry to hear that. He closed the folder. My grandchildren, Emma and James, are 7 and 5. Their mother, my son-in-law, is no longer with us. Their father, my son Michael, travels extensively for business. They are challenging children. Children often are when they're hurting, Valentina said softly. Indeed. He pressed a button on his desk. Mrs. Wilkins will show you to the children now. We can discuss your specific duties further at dinner. Dinner, sir? I dine with the staff every Friday. It's a tradition my late wife insisted upon, one of the few I've maintained. A shadow passed over his face. As Valentina rose to leave, Edward added, Miss Reyes. Yes, sir? Welcome to the Lancaster home. 6 months passed in a blur of routine. Valentina learned the rhythms of the Lancaster mansion, when the east-facing rooms flooded with morning light, which floorboards creaked, how the sea breeze carried salt through the open windows at dusk. More importantly, she learned the rhythms of Emma and James. Emma's nightmares that left her screaming for a mother who would never return. James's stubborn silence that broke only when Valentina read to him about dinosaurs and space. Both children's initial resistance had melted into tentative acceptance, then blossomed into love. What Valentina hadn't expected was her growing connection with Edward Lancaster. It began with simple questions during their Friday dinners. Edward asking about Columbia, about her teaching, about her dreams. Valentina found herself sharing stories she'd never told anyone in America, about the vibrant streets of Medellin, her mother's laugh, the classroom where she taught children to read. Edward, in turn, shared his own stories, his humble beginnings as a construction worker, building his real estate empire, the wife he'd lost to cancer 15 years ago, the children who had grown distant as his wealth increased. They see the money, not the man, he confessed one evening as they sat on the terrace overlooking the Atlantic. His health had been declining, his breathing more labored, but he insisted on their evening conversations. Perhaps they never knew the man, Valentina suggested gently. Edward's laugh turned into a cough. Perhaps not. Victoria, my ex-wife, made quite sure of that after the divorce, turned them against me. Not that I was Father of the Year. It's never too late to try again, Valentina said. Edward gave her a long look. Sometimes, Valentina, it is, but I appreciate your optimism. He gestured to the mansion around them. All this, and the only people who speak honestly to me, are my grandchildren and my Colombian nanny. I can stop being honest if you prefer. Never. His weathered hand briefly covered hers. It's the only thing keeping me sane in this mausoleum. What neither of them knew was that Patricia Lancaster, Edward's daughter, had been watching their interaction from the shadows of the garden, her face twisted with disgust and suspicion. She's after your money, Dad. It's obvious. Patricia's voice carried down the hallway as Valentina approached with James's medicine. That's enough, Patricia. Edward's voice was firm, but tired. First, she charmed the brats. Now she's working on you. I've seen this before. These foreigners. I said enough. Edward's shout was followed by harsh coughing. Valentina froze, medicine tray in hand, as Patricia emerged from Edward's study. The woman's cold eyes raked over Valentina with undisguised contempt. Eavesdropping. How convenient. Patricia was 45, maintained by expensive procedures and designer clothes. Her blonde hair was pulled into a severe ponytail, accentuating features hardened by decades of entitlement. James needs his asthma medication, Valentina replied evenly. Listen to me carefully. My father may be fooled by your little act, but I'm not. When he's gone, and let's be honest, that's not far off, you'll be back cleaning toilets where you belong." Valentina held Patricia's gaze. "Mrs. Lancaster, I understand your concern for your father, but I am here to care for Emma and James. That is all." "Is it?" Patricia's smile was venomous. "The help doesn't usually take sunset strolls with the employer. Your father enjoys conversation." "I bet that's not all he enjoys." Patricia looked her up and down with a smirk. "Tell me, how much extra does he pay for the conversation?" The insinuation hit Valentina like a slap, but before she could respond, a small voice spoke from behind them. "Aunt Patricia, why are you being mean to Val?" Emma stood in her nightgown, clutching her stuffed elephant. Patricia's face instantly transformed into a sugary mask. "Oh, Emma, darling, Auntie's just making sure everyone's doing their job properly." "Val does her job the best, Emma," declared, taking Valentina's hand. "And Grandpa says she's the only one who doesn't want anything from him except kindness." Patricia's smile froze. Did he now? "Come on, Emma," Valentina said softly. "Let's take James his medicine and then finish our bedtime story." As they walked away, Valentina felt Patricia's eyes burning into her back. She knew the battle lines had been drawn, but she couldn't have imagined how quickly the war would escalate. If you're finding yourself drawn into Valentina's world, into this tale of dignity in the face of prejudice, then this journey is just beginning. Hit that subscribe button to make sure you don't miss Chapter 2, where the Lancaster family's true colors will be revealed in ways that might just break your heart, but could also restore your faith in justice. Every subscription means another story I can bring to life for you, another moment where we see that true worth isn't measured by wealth, but by character. Subscribe now, and let's continue this journey together. Chapter 2. The Fall of a King. The July heat was oppressive, even with the state-of-the-art cooling system working overtime. Valentina wiped Emma's tears as the little girl huddled beneath her covers, thunder cracking outside. "I'm scared, Val," Emma whispered, her small fingers clutching Valentina's hand. "I know, querida." Valentina stroked Emma's hair. "But the storm is just the sky clearing itself out, like when you cry and then feel better." "Grandpa says the same thing." Emma's voice caught. "Is Grandpa going to die?" The question hung in the air like the humidity, heavy, unavoidable. Edward had been hospitalized twice in the past month. The doctors' faces grew grimmer with each visit. "Your grandfather is very sick," Valentina said carefully. "But he loves you and James very much." "Mom died," Emma said matter-of-factly. "Dad never comes home. If Grandpa dies, will you leave too?" The raw vulnerability in the child's question pierced Valentina's heart. "I will stay as long as I can, Emma. I promise." Later that night, after both children had finally fallen asleep, Valentina found Edward in his study. His once imposing frame seemed to be shrinking before her eyes, his skin taking on a yellowish pallor that the warm lamplight couldn't disguise. His study... "The children are asleep," she reported softly. Edward nodded, gesturing to the chair across from him. "Sit with me a while, Valentina." She sat, noticing the untouched glass of whiskey at his elbow, the oxygen tank discreetly positioned behind his chair. "I've updated my will," he said without preamble. Valentina shifted uncomfortably. "Sir, that's not—"
No. Edward waved away her protest. "This isn't about you, or rather, it is, but not in the way you think." He leaned forward, his breathing labored. "My children are vultures circling a dying man. They've been that way since Victoria poisoned them against me after the divorce. Money is all they see when they look at me." "Sir." "Edward, please. After all this time—" "Edward," Valentina corrected herself. "Your children love you, in their way." His laugh was bitter. "Their way is to wait for me to die so they can spend my money." He took a shallow breath. Patricia has been calling my lawyer weekly to check on the estate planning. Michael hasn't visited his own children in 3 months, but he found time to send me investment proposals to protect my legacy. Valentina remained silent, unsure what to say. You're the only one who sees me, Valentina. Not my money, not my power, me. Edward's eyes, still sharp despite his illness, held hers. You and the children. We see you because you let us, Valentina said gently. Edward considered this, then nodded slowly. Perhaps. He reached for a folder on his desk, removing several photographs. This was my father, a bricklayer. He died with calluses on his hands and $500 in the bank. The photo showed a weathered man with Edward's eyes, standing proudly in front of a modest home. He taught me to build things that last. Edward's voice grew distant. I built an empire of glass and concrete. But my family? He shook his head. My family is as hollow as those buildings before the walls go up. It's not too late, Valentina insisted. Speak to them, really speak to them. I've tried. Edward's voice hardened. Last week, I told Patricia I was considering donating half my fortune to education charities in underserved communities. She threatened to have me declared mentally incompetent. Valentina gasped softly. Michael suggested I might need specialized care away from my negative influences. They meant you, of course. Valentina felt a chill despite the warm night. I know. Edward's hand trembled as he replaced the photographs. But they see what they want to see, a foreign woman taking advantage of a sick old man. Perhaps I should leave, Valentina said quietly. For the children's sake. For yours. That's exactly what they want. Edward's voice regained some of its strength. And it's exactly why I need you to stay. He pressed a button on his desk phone. Jenkins, bring the envelope from the safe. Minutes later, Edward's most trusted security man entered with a sealed envelope, which he handed to Edward before silently departing. My attorney has the original, but I want you to have this copy. Edward held out the envelope. Don't open it, but keep it safe. What is it? Valentina asked, reluctantly taking the envelope. Insurance. For you and the children. 2 weeks later, Edward Lancaster collapsed in his study. By the time the ambulance arrived, he was gone. The mansion transformed overnight. Black-clad figures moved through rooms that had never felt so cavernous. Patricia took command of the household, relegating Valentina to the children's quarters, speaking to her only through Mrs. Wilkins. Michael Lancaster appeared the day after his father's death, handsome in the way only wealth and privilege can craft. Tailored suit, perfect teeth, carefully maintained stubble that suggested both sophistication and a carefully calculated ruggedness. At 43, he bore his father's strong jaw and his mother's cold eyes. He spent exactly 12 minutes with his children before retreating to Edward's study to handle affairs. Valentina focused on Emma and James, shielding them from the whispers, the calculating looks, the parade of lawyers and financial advisors. The children clung to her, sensing the shifting ground beneath them. "Are they going to make us leave, Val?" asked James, his small face solemn as she tucked him in. "No, querido. This is your home." "But it's not yours," he said, with a child's brutal honesty. Valentina had no answer for that. 3 days after Edward's death, Mrs. Wilkins delivered a message. Valentina's presence was requested at the will reading the following morning. Requested or required? Valentina asked. Mrs. Wilkins' face softened slightly, the first crack in her professional demeanor. Mr. Edward insisted your presence was mandatory. His exact words. That night, Valentina couldn't sleep. She paced her small room, Edward's envelope burning a hole in her thoughts. She'd hidden it beneath her mattress, resisting the temptation to open it. Whatever insurance Edward had provided, she hoped it would protect the children more than her. The next morning, Valentina dressed carefully in her one good dress. Navy blue, modest, purchased for her mother's funeral. She pulled her dark hair into a simple bun and wore no jewelry except the small gold cross her mother had given her. The great room had been transformed into an impromptu conference room. A massive table dominated the space, surrounded by expensive leather chairs filled with the Lancaster extended family, cousins, ex-wives, stepchildren, all drawn by the scent of money. Patricia sat at one end, resplendent in black Chanel, a triple strand of pearls at her throat. Michael lounged beside her, scrolling through his phone with studied indifference. Victoria, Edward's ex-wife, sat opposite Patricia, her face a masterpiece of cosmetic intervention, her eyes sharp with anticipation. Valentina stood uncertainly at the doorway until Edward's attorney, Mr. Hoffman, spotted her. "Ms. Reyes, please come in. We've been waiting for you." Every head turned, every eye assessed, judged, dismissed. "Why is she even here?" Victoria stage whispered to the woman beside her. "She's just the maid." Patricia's laugh was like breaking glass. "Daddy's little charity project. He always had a soft spot for strays."
Valentina took a deep breath and walked to the only empty chair at the far end of the table opposite Mr. Hoffman. The lawyer was in his 60s, with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses and a manner that suggested he'd seen every form of human greed and found it tedious. "Now that we're all present, we can begin." Mr. Hoffman opened a leather portfolio. "I'll dispense with the legal preamble and get to the substance of Mr. Lancaster's last will and testament." For 20 minutes, the attorney distributed Edward's fortune with methodical precision. Charitable foundations received substantial endowments. Loyal employees were remembered generously. Distant relatives received token amounts. Patricia and Michael shifted impatiently, waiting for the main event, the distribution of Edward's considerable real estate holdings and investment portfolio. Regarding the Lancaster children, Emma and James, Mr. Lancaster has established a trust for their education and care, to be administered by Palmer Trust Company with oversight from an appointed guardian. Michael straightened. "As their father, I assume?" "As to the appointment of guardian, Mr. Lancaster has named Miss Valentina Reyes as primary guardian of Emma and James Lancaster, with full residential custody." The room erupted. Patricia shot to her feet. "This is outrageous! Some foreign gold digger!" "Mr. Lancaster anticipated your objection," Mr. Hoffman said calmly. "He has provided extensive documentation of his reasoning, including reports from child psychologists who evaluated the children's attachment to Miss Reyes, and detailed records of parental contact, or lack thereof, over the past year." Michael's face darkened. "I'll contest this. She manipulated a sick old man." Mr. Lancaster also anticipated that response. Mr. Hoffman's voice remained even. "He underwent 3 separate psychological evaluations in the months before his death, all confirming his mental competence. Additionally, he recorded video statements explaining his decisions." The lawyer paused. "I should warn you that contesting the will triggers certain clauses that would significantly reduce your inheritance, Mr. Lancaster." Michael subsided, fury etched on his face. "As to the distribution of property," Mr. Hoffman continued, "the Lancaster building in Manhattan goes to Michael Lancaster. The Palm Beach commercial properties are bequeathed to Patricia Lancaster." Patricia's triumphant smile faded as Mr. Hoffman cleared his throat. "Per Mr. Lancaster's final instructions, the primary residence, including all its contents, is hereby transferred to Miss Valentina Reyes." Silence fell like an axe. Then chaos erupted. "This is theft!" Victoria shrieked. "She seduced him! She's a whore!" Patricia's face contorted with rage. "I'll have this overturned by tomorrow." Michael snarled, already on his phone. Valentina sat frozen, unable to process what she'd heard. The mansion? To her? It was impossible. It was too much. It would only confirm what they all thought of her. Mr. Hoffman raised his hand for silence. There is a recorded message from Mr. Lancaster that he requested be played at this juncture. He placed a tablet on the table and pressed play. Edward's face filled the screen, gaunt but composed, his eyes clear and determined. If you're watching this, I'm gone, and my family is likely calling Valentina every name in the book. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. Let me be clear. Valentina Reyes never asked for anything. Not money, not gifts, not even a raise. Edward's gaze seemed to find each person around the table. What she gave freely was kindness, respect, and genuine care, not just to my grandchildren, but to a dying old man who had everything except what matters most. He paused, taking a labored breath. Patricia, Michael, you're my children, and I love you. But you stopped seeing me as a father years ago. I became a bank, an investor, a problem to manage until the inheritance. You visited when you needed money or connections, not because you wanted to see me. Edward's eyes hardened. Valentina saw a human being in need of compassion. Emma and James saw a grandfather who read them stories and listened to their dreams. The rest of you saw dollar signs. He leaned closer to the camera. I'm not giving Valentina my home because she's the help. I'm giving it because she was the only one who helped, the only one who made it a home again. Edward sat back, suddenly looking very tired. Contest this if you must. The lawyers will get rich, and you'll get less than I've offered. Or accept it, and perhaps learn something about what actually matters in this brief life we're given. The screen went black. In the silence that followed, Valentina stood. Every eye turned to her. I never wanted this. I never asked for it. Then sign it over, if you have any decency at all, Patricia spat. Valentina looked at her, at all of them, seeing the anger, the entitlement, the absolute certainty that someone like her didn't deserve what someone like them should rightfully have. Then she remembered Emma and James, how they needed stability, how Edward had trusted her to provide it. No, Valentina said, her voice gaining strength. Not for you. But for Emma and James, this will be their home, the home where they remember their grandfather, where they feel safe. She gathered her dignity around her like armor. You can have everything else, the money, the properties, fight over them if you want. But this home, her voice caught, this home will be what Edward wanted it to be, a place of kindness. With that, Valentina walked out, leaving behind a stunned silence broken only by Mr. Hoffman's approving nod. Chapter 3. The Key to Everything. Autumn painted Palm Beach in subtle shades, more felt than seen. A slight crispness to the morning air, a different quality to the light that slanted through the windows of the Lancaster mansion. 3 months had passed since Edward's death, and the household had found a new rhythm. The legal challenges had come, as expected. Patricia had hired the most cutthroat attorney in Florida. Michael had leveraged his business connections, and Victoria had waged a whisper campaign throughout Palm Beach society, painting Valentina as everything from an illegal immigrant to a practiced seductress. But Edward Lancaster had been nothing if not thorough. His video testimony, the psychological evaluations, the meticulous documentation of his children's neglect and Valentina's care, all of it stood firm against the barrage of legal challenges. The courts had upheld his will in its entirety. Still, victory felt hollow in the face of such bitterness. Valentina had offered compromises. Patricia and Michael could visit the children any time. Family heirlooms would be preserved for Emma and James's adulthood. Lancaster family traditions would be maintained. All rejected. The Lancaster siblings wanted total victory or scorched earth. On this particular October morning, Valentina sat at the kitchen island reviewing Emma's math homework while Mrs. Wilkins prepared breakfast. The housekeeper had stayed on, her initial frostiness towards Valentina melting into a grudging respect after witnessing the legal onslaught Valentina had weathered with grace. "Miss Reyes," Mrs. Wilkins said, sliding a cup of coffee across the counter, "there's something you should know." Valentina looked up, noting the concern in the older woman's eyes. "What is it?" "I overheard Mr. Michael on the phone yesterday when he came to see the children. He was in the garden, thought no one could hear." Mrs. Wilkins lowered her voice. "He was talking about having you investigated, immigration status, background checks, anything they could use." Valentina sighed. "My immigration status is perfect. Edward made sure of that." "It's not just that. He mentioned something about the old man's dirty business and how if they found a connection to you—" Mrs. Wilkins trailed off. A chill ran through Valentina. Edward had been a legitimate businessman as far as she knew, but a man of his wealth and influence who could say what corners might have been cut, what rules bent. "Thank you for telling me." Valentina squeezed the housekeeper's weathered hand. "You're good for those children. Better than their own blood. That counts for something in my book." The doorbell rang, interrupting their conversation. Mrs. Wilkins went to answer it, returning moments later with Mr. Hoffman. "Miss Reyes, I hope I'm not intruding." "Not at all." Valentina gestured to a stool. "Coffee?" "Please." He settled himself, placing his briefcase on the counter. "I have some matters to discuss regarding Edward's estate." Mrs. Wilkins discreetly withdrew as Mr. Hoffman opened his briefcase.
First, the good news. The final appeal has been dismissed. The house and guardianship are permanently secured. Valentina let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. And the children? Michael has agreed to the visitation schedule, grudgingly, but legally binding. Mr. Hoffman removed several documents. "Now, there's another matter Edward asked me to address with you once the legal challenges were resolved." He slid a small key across the counter. "This opens a safe deposit box at Palm Beach Atlantic Bank. Edward was quite insistent that you retrieve its contents personally, and only after the litigation concluded." Valentina stared at the key. "Did he tell you what's inside?" "No." Mr. Hoffman's eyes twinkled. "But he said it would change everything." His exact words. After Mr. Hoffman left, Valentina sat holding the small key, turning it over in her fingers. More secrets, more of Edward's chess moves from beyond the grave. Part of her wanted to throw the key into the ocean, to be done with the Lancaster drama and focus on the children. But Edward had trusted her, and despite everything, she had trusted him. That afternoon, after ensuring Emma and James were occupied with their tutor, Valentina drove to Palm Beach Atlantic Bank. The manager escorted her personally to the vault, his manner deferential, Edward's influence still opening doors. Alone in the viewing room, Valentina inserted the key into box 1422. Inside lay a sealed envelope and a small voice recorder. She pressed play. "Valentina." Edward's voice filled the small room. "If you're listening to this, you've weathered the storm. I knew you would." She closed her eyes, the familiar voice bringing both comfort and grief. "What you'll find in this envelope will shock you, perhaps even anger you. But I need you to understand why I've done what I've done." Valentina opened her eyes, staring at the envelope. "My business wasn't always clean. In the beginning, I made compromises, cut corners. Nothing illegal, but ethical gray areas. As I succeeded, I promised myself I'd make amends someday." Edward's voice grew softer. 5 years ago, I began researching charitable causes, education for underserved communities, medical care for those who couldn't afford it. That search led me to a small foundation in Medellin, Colombia. Valentina's heart began to pound. The Esperanza Foundation provided scholarships, medical care, community development. I donated anonymously, but I monitored their work, including the people they helped. Edward paused, and Valentina could hear him gathering himself. In 2020, they helped a teacher's assistant pay for her mother's cancer treatments, Maria Elena Reyes. Valentina gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Her mother.
I didn't hire you because of that connection. I interviewed 12 candidates. You were genuinely the best. But I admit, I was curious. I wanted to see if the daughter of Maria Elena Reyes was as remarkable as the foundation reports suggested. You exceeded every expectation, Valentina. Not because you were grateful or indebted. You never knew about my connection to your mother's care, but because of who you are, the kindness that's intrinsic to your nature. She wiped away tears, hardly believing what she was hearing. The envelope contains documentation of my anonymous donations, a total of $20 million to the Esperanza Foundation over 5 years. The final donation of $5 million was made last month, with one condition. They established the Maria Elena Reyes Memorial Scholarship for young women pursuing education careers. Valentina's hand trembled as she reached for the envelope. There's more. I've established a separate charitable foundation here in America, the Valentina Reyes Foundation for Family Support, with an endowment of $50 million. You are the sole director. She shook her head in disbelief, even though Edward couldn't see her. This isn't guilt, Valentina. It's not obligation. It's recognition of what matters. My children chase wealth without purpose. You create purpose from whatever you have. Edward's voice grew tired, but determined. The lawyers will contact you about the foundation. Everything is arranged. All you need to do is decide how to help others. Who better than someone who understands both struggle and compassion? A long pause. One last thing. In case my children's accusations have planted any doubt, I never saw you as anything but what you are, a remarkable young woman with the heart I wish my own children possessed. The love I felt for you was paternal, protective, the daughter of my spirit, if not my blood. Valentina covered her face, shoulders shaking with silent sobs. Live well, Valentina. Show Emma and James what truly matters, and perhaps, someday, show Patricia and Michael as well. The recording ended. With trembling hands, Valentina opened the envelope. Inside were bank statements, foundation documents, photographs of smiling Colombian children in front of a building bearing her mother's name, and a handwritten letter from the director of the Esperanza Foundation expressing gratitude to the anonymous angel who had transformed so many lives. Life's full circle stunned her. Her mother's illness, the very tragedy that had driven her from Colombia to America, had unknowingly connected her to Edward Lancaster long before she ever entered his home. She traced her mother's name on the foundation letterhead. Maria Elena had died believing they had been lucky to receive financial help. She never knew her daughter would one day continue that legacy of giving 1,000-fold. 1 year later, Valentina stood in the garden of the Lancaster mansion, her mansion now, though she still struggled with that concept. Emma and James chased each other around the fountain, their laughter healing the final wounds in her heart.
The Valentina Reyes Foundation had funded after-school programs in 5 states, provided housing assistance to 300 single-parent families, and established a partnership with the Esperanza Foundation to create exchange programs between American and Colombian students. The mansion itself had been transformed. What was once a museum of wealth had become a vibrant home, hosting community events, children's reading programs, and support groups for immigrant families navigating American systems. Patricia and Michael remained distant, though the hostility had cooled to mere frostiness. They visited the children monthly, their initial shock at the transformation of their childhood home gradually giving way to grudging acknowledgement of what Valentina had accomplished. As Valentina watched the children play, she heard the crunch of gravel on the driveway. Turning, she saw a sleek black car pull up, Patricia's Bentley. Valentina straightened, preparing herself for another tense encounter. But when Patricia emerged, something was different. Her usual armor of designer clothes and perfect makeup was in place, but her expression lacked its customary hostility. "The gardens look better than they have in years," Patricia said by way of greeting, surveying the flower beds Valentina had restored with Mrs. Wilkins' guidance. "Thank you," Valentina replied cautiously. "The children help water them every morning." Patricia nodded, watching Emma and James for a moment, before turning to Valentina. "I received an invitation to your foundation's gala next month. Everyone in the Lancaster family was invited. For the children's sake, I thought I'd like to come. And I'd like to make a donation." Valentina couldn't hide her surprise. "That's very generous." Patricia's perfectly manicured hand waved dismissively. "I've been following your work. The literacy program in Overtown, the medical clinic in Little Haiti." She hesitated. "You've done more with this house in a year than our family did in 3 decades." The admission clearly cost her pride, but Patricia continued. "Michael won't admit it, but he's impressed too. He's been looking into the tax benefits of philanthropic partnerships." Valentina bit back a smile at the typical Lancaster approach, finding the angle, the benefit. But it was progress. "The children would be happy to see you both at the gala," she said diplomatically. Patricia glanced toward Emma and James again. "They look happy. Genuinely happy." There was something like wonder in her voice, as if the concept were foreign to her. "Our house was never like this when we were growing up. It was quiet, formal." "It doesn't have to stay that way," Valentina said gently. "They're your family, too." Patricia met her eyes, something vulnerable, briefly visible beneath the polished surface. "I don't know how to do this. Any of it." "Neither did I," Valentina admitted. "But I had good teachers." She nodded toward the children. "They'll show you, if you let them."
For a moment, the two women stood in silence, a fragile peace between them where once there had been only bitterness. Then James spotted his aunt. "Aunt Patricia," he called, running toward her with Emma following. "Come see the tadpoles in the pond. They're getting legs." Patricia looked momentarily alarmed at the prospect of pond creatures, but squared her shoulders as if facing a business negotiation. "Lead the way, James." As Patricia allowed herself to be dragged toward the pond, Valentina felt a presence beside her. Mrs. Wilkins had appeared, a small smile on her usually stern face. "Mr. Edward would be pleased," the housekeeper said quietly. "Yes," Valentina agreed. "I think he would." She fingered the small gold key she now wore on a chain around her neck. Not the key to the safe deposit box, but the original key to the mansion Edward had given her. A reminder that sometimes the most valuable inheritance wasn't property or money, but purpose. The Florida sun caught the key, sending a flash of gold across the garden, where Emma was now showing Patricia how to hold a tadpole in her cupped hands. The woman's face a complex mixture of disgust and fascination that made both children giggle. Valentina smiled. This was Edward's true legacy. Not the mansion or the money, but the bridges being built, however tentatively, between the people he'd left behind. The key to everything had never been wealth or property. It had been, and would always be, connection. And there you have it, the conclusion of Valentina's journey from being just the maid to becoming the heart and soul of the Lancaster legacy. If this story touched your heart, if you found yourself cheering for Valentina as she navigated this world of privilege with grace and dignity, then please hit that subscribe button. Each subscription enables me to continue bringing these emotional, meaningful stories to life. Stories that remind us that true wealth isn't measured in dollars, but in compassion and purpose. Hit subscribe now, turn on notifications, and be the first to know when the next chapter of a new journey begins. And remember, in a world that often values the wrong things, be the Valentina, the person who brings warmth, kindness, and humanity to every room you enter.